My name is Samantha, and I am 27 years old. For most of my life, I carried the burden of a truth that ate away at me silently. It was the kind of truth that can break families apart, destroy reputations, and leave scars that never really heal. And the man at the center of it all was my own father. You see, from the outside, my dad always appeared like a responsible, hardworking man. He was charming, the kind of man who could smile at a neighbor and instantly win their trust. But behind closed doors, he was an entirely different person. He was manipulative, selfish, and cruel in ways most people would never believe. Growing up, I had to endure his temper, his lies, and his way of twisting every situation to make himself the victim. My mother, the woman who tried to protect me, didn't survive that marriage. She divorced him when I was just 12, and I watched her rebuild her life from nothing. For years, I avoided him, keeping only minimal contact. But then, out of nowhere, he decided to announce that he had fallen in love again. A new woman. Younger, beautiful, and full of the kind of blind optimism that I once wished I had. He invited me to meet her, and when I did, I couldn't help but notice the way she looked at him, with admiration, trust, and love. It was the same way my mother had looked at him in the beginning, before the lies and manipulations slowly destroyed her spirit. Now here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Because while I tried to stay silent, tried to let her discover the truth for herself, there came a point where I couldn't take it anymore. And that moment, when I opened my mouth and revealed the truth about my father, would change everything. But before I dive into the chaos that followed, let me pause for a second. I want to ask you, the one listening right now, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments. I love seeing how far our growing community of justice-served stories spreads across the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and join this community where truth and karma always find their way back. Now back to the story. When I first met my dad's new wife, her name was Laura. She greeted me with a warm hug. She seemed genuinely excited to meet me, and she asked questions about my life, my job, and my interests. She even mentioned how thrilled she was to finally have a stepdaughter she could bond with. And while I smiled politely, inside I was boiling with conflict. Because this wasn't just about me disliking my dad. It was about knowing exactly what he was capable of. Laura had no idea that he had drained my mother's bank account during their divorce. She didn't know about the emotional abuse, the nights I heard my mom crying behind closed doors, or the way he used to yell at me when I was a child just for making mistakes as simple as spilling a glass of water. She had no idea that the charming man sitting beside her had a history of cheating, lying, and destroying lives. So I kept my mouth shut for months. I told myself that it wasn't my business, that Laura was an adult who could make her own choices. But every time I saw her, every time I heard her gush about how kind and supportive he was, it made my skin crawl. And then the breaking point came. One evening, my father invited me over for dinner with them. The table was set perfectly, candles lit, Laura smiling as she served dishes she had clearly spent hours preparing. She was glowing with happiness, saying things like, "Your dad has been nothing but wonderful to me. I'm so lucky to have him." And then my father, with that smug little smirk he always wore when he thought he was untouchable, leaned back in his chair and said, "See, Samantha? Not everyone thinks I'm such a bad guy. Some people actually know how to appreciate me." The way he said it was a dagger aimed right at me. It was his way of reminding me that he had rewritten the story of his past, that he was now the victim in everyone else's eyes, and that I was just the bitter daughter who couldn't move on. I excused myself from the table, went to the bathroom, and stared at myself in the mirror. My hands were shaking, my chest tight. Because in that moment I knew, if I stayed silent any longer, Laura would be walking straight into the same nightmare my mother had endured. When I walked back out, my father was pouring himself a glass of wine, laughing with Laura. He had no idea what was about to come next. And honestly, neither did I. Because the words that would leave my mouth that night weren't planned. They came from years of anger, years of silence, years of watching him get away with everything. And when I spoke, the world around us shifted. When I sat back down at that dinner table, my pulse was hammering in my ears. My dad was laughing, glass of wine in hand, and Laura was watching him like he was the perfect man. It made me sick. I didn't even think about softening my words. I didn't ease into it, didn't try to make it sound gentle. I just looked directly at Laura, held her gaze, and said, "Do you really know the man sitting next to you?" The room went silent. My dad froze, the smug grin slipping from his face. Laura blinked, confused, and tried to laugh it off at first, but my expression must have told her this wasn't a joke. What do you mean? She asked, setting down her fork. And that was it. The dam inside me broke. I told her everything. I told her how he treated my mom, how he cheated repeatedly, how he drained her savings during the divorce and left her struggling to raise me on scraps. I told her how he screamed at me when I was little, how he made me feel worthless, how he never once took responsibility for anything he did. My dad tried to interrupt me, his voice sharp and defensive. That's not true, she's exaggerating, Laura. You know how bitter she is about the past. But I didn't let him twist it. Not this time. I cut him off and said, don't you dare call this exaggeration. You know exactly what you did. And if Laura wants proof, I have it. Because I did. Old emails. Text messages he sent my mom. Legal documents from the divorce. I had kept it all, tucked away in case he ever tried to smear my mom's name again. Laura looked between us, her face pale, her eyes darting from me to him. And then she asked the one question that made the air in the room shift completely. Is it true? For once, my father didn't have a clever answer. He sputtered, tried to spin it, but his words came out broken. He was exposed. Laura excused herself from the table, her hands trembling. She went upstairs, and the sound of the bedroom door closing echoed like a final verdict. That's when my dad turned on me. His face twisted with rage, the mask completely gone. Do you have any idea what you've done? He hissed, his voice sharp and venomous. You've ruined everything for me. And I just stared at him, my own voice steady for the first time in years. No, Dad. You ruined everything for yourself. I just told the truth. For the rest of that night, the house was a storm. Doors slamming, footsteps upstairs, my father pacing like a caged animal. Laura didn't come back down. She locked herself in the bedroom, and when I left, I caught a glimpse of her through the crack in the door. She was sitting on the bed, clutching her phone, her face streaked with tears. I knew then that the truth had landed exactly the way it needed to. But here's the thing about people like my dad, they don't give up easily. In the days that followed, he tried everything. He called me nonstop, leaving voicemails where he screamed, cursed, and even tried to guilt-trip me. Then he switched tactics, sending long texts pretending to be the victim, saying things like, "You've destroyed my marriage. Why do you hate me so much? Don't you want me to be happy?" But I ignored him. For once I had no guilt. Laura, on the other hand, reached out to me quietly. She asked to meet me for coffee. And when we sat across from each other in that little cafe, she looked exhausted. Her eyes were red, her voice shaking. But the first words out of her mouth were, "Thank you." She told me she had started noticing red flags with him. Little things. The way he snapped when she asked simple questions. How he never liked when she talked to male coworkers. How he brushed off her concerns with a laugh. She said she had ignored it because she wanted to believe he was the man she fell in love with. But now, with the truth laid bare, she couldn't unsee it. I didn't push her to make a decision. I just told her to protect herself, to look at the proof I had, to really see him for who he was. And she nodded, silent but determined. It took only 3 weeks before I got the message I didn't expect. Laura left him. She packed her things while he was at work, filed for separation, and moved into her sister's house. She didn't even give him the chance to spin another story. She saw the truth and walked away. And my dad? He was furious. He told anyone who would listen that I had brainwashed her, that I was jealous, bitter, hateful. He tried to turn the narrative again. But this time it didn't work. Because Laura started speaking up too. She told people what I had told her, shared the documents I gave her. His carefully crafted image crumbled. Neighbors started looking at him differently. His coworkers whispered behind his back. And for the first time in his life, my father had no control over the story. And I won't lie to you, it felt good. After years of silence, after years of watching him get away with everything, I finally felt like the scales had balanced just a little. But of course people ask me, for telling her? Was it my place? Should I have stayed out of it? That's why I'm here sharing this. Because part of me wonders if I did the right thing.